Hello and welcome to Media7. I'm Russell Brown. If you're watching this program, you almost certainly use the internet. Indeed, even if you didn't watch the show, the same would be true. According to a major study released last week, 83% of us are online, and we like it there. In this light, debates about how the internet grows and is financed and regulated matter to all of us, and that's the theme of our show this week. To kick us off, Jose Barbosa looks at the issues.
Remember when the internet was so new we needed to be told how to use it by people who looked like cult leaders? God, we were clueless morons, weren't we?
Think of your homepage as your old homeroom in high school. It's just a place where you start.
Not anymore though, because according to the World Internet Project New Zealand's report, released last week, 83% of New Zealanders are internet users. The same percentage of those users enjoy a broadband connection. And nearly half use social media, the clear winner in those stakes being Facebook. In the same week, figures from the Advertising Standards Authority showed growth in online advertising, while the rest of the industry is still slowly withering away like a wrinkly old balloon. And currently, some pretty big ideas about how to improve access are being chucked about. The government put up $300 million for rural broadband, the majority of which would come from the industry.
It's in effect a levy from the various participants in the industry to set up a fund to develop rural broadband services and a couple of other things which are listed, the 111 emergency call system and any remote telecommunications obligations.
And the telcos were stoked.
The levy is a cost of doing business. That is why our preference would have been for the government to centrally fund it through taxation.
As would Telecom, whose share price hit a new low after the announcement. Strangely though, neither were the farmers, who wanted another $200 million chucked into the trough.
It's a lot of country to cover out there, and we are, sparsely populated. So, we do need to make sure we invest the appropriate amount of money, and we're just not sure that we're there yet.
Meanwhile, some captains of industry got together and decided to seek $900 million to lay a fibre cable to Australia and the US. The owners of the current cable weren't so jubilant.
You could write a book on the Southern Cross experience, which had its pitfalls and rocky roads, everything from snails in Morro Bay in California that needed to be moved through to refinancing requirements and so on.
But it wasn't all about creating access. The government's new internet filter started being phased in last month, aimed at blocking child pornography. The intent is benign, but some feel the filter is one measure too far.
We're giving the government a tool which we may not want to have and that future governments may abuse.
So a lot of money and a lot of ideas are currently up in the air, including the government's still vague $1.5 billion promise of uber-speed broadband. What does this mean for the future of our online lives? And is it just me, or does that guy have really big hands?
So thanks for joining us.
And happy computing.
Jose Barbosa there. With me now are three gentlemen who've been on or about the internet for quite a while, since before it had pictures, probably. Digital strategist and blogger at peoplepoints.co.nz, Paul Reynolds.
Hi, Russell.
Computer World New Zealand editor, Rob O'Neill.
Hi, Russell.
And former Vodafone marketing chief and founding Pacific Fibre investor, Mark Rushworth.
Hi, Russell.
Welcome to you all, gentlemen. Now, Paul, let's start with the World Internet Project reports. The second one, what jumped out for you from that?
Well, I think you've got to record that the World Internet Project is a latitudinal study, so it's a really interesting piece of research. So what we'll learn will be, iterative. We'll get there. This time round, I was really, like everybody else, curious. It's like the dog who didn't bark. Everybody's on the internet. It's like this no story anymore. We're all on it. What they're delving down into, and it's a phone survey, and that has its limitations about how you can pull out of this. The phone survey is saying that we're all social networking like mad. But two things that came out of that was the ethnicity around some of that social networking stuff was really interesting. OK, we're all doing it, and where are we doing it? We're doing it on Facebook, we're doing it on TradeMe. That seems to be brought in as a social networking thing. But what we're doing is really interesting because ethnicity-wise, Maori and Pacific are there stronger than Pākehā, and I thought that was really interesting.
And that I think showed up in the
yeah.
first one, that they saw that as a trend, and this time, Maori and Pacific Island people are there, and once they get online, they love social networking services.
And I see in some other work that I've been involved in, and I've seen others involved in this. I know 2 or 3 iwi who are really, really interested in this, not just about playing in Facebook, but almost like developing their own social networking space for, if you've got an iwi with 30,000 people who identify as whoever, then it's build a space, which is a social networking space. That's what interests me, is becoming social network behaviour, not just the social networking spaces. And that's what sprung out for me, was how mainstream the behaviour was, not so much how mainstream the sites were.
Everyone at the moment is on Facebook. 75% of the people doing it are on Facebook. Do you expect that to change?
I'm not sure about that. I don't know what others are feeling, but I'm a bit bored with being in Facebook. And it's not that I want Facebook to do more for me. I just think there are more interesting places where we're doing more collab things and stuff. If you look at the activity in, say, like TradeMe, I mean, that's a lot of social networking behaviour inside TradeMe. But there's heaps going on.
It fascinates me that TradeMe is always the one that's left out of any kind of survey in New Zealand of social internet use. It's the biggest discussion forum in the country, apart from anything else.
Yeah, and that was another pick-out, was of people who've uploaded. I mean, everybody's uploading into social networking spaces, however defined, in this report. And then you think, there's a little thing there thing it says, and of that, 10% of this part of it have made money out of it by uploading something. They've sold something. And you think, oh, what's that about? And I think it's TradeMe, although the methodology doesn't bring that out.
No, and that hadn't occurred to me, actually, that would be it. I suspect you're right. Rob, is there any part of the internet, of internet use, where we're not going gangbusters in that report?
Yeah, well, the thing that stands out is mobile. I heard some figures out of the States the other day that 30% of mobile phone owners now have a smartphone. It's much less than that in New Zealand, and I think it's only 6% have actually been on the internet from a mobile phone. I would have thought it was higher than that, because it seems like everybody's twittering from their iPhone these days. But yeah, no, that's the growth area to come.
Well, as Paul pointed out, they only called people on landlines, which may have had some influence on the results.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think there's absolutely no doubt that that's going to be the growth area of the future. And you see the new models of iPhone, the Android phone to come, the iPad. I'm not quite sure where that's going to be counted. It probably depends on which model you have, whether it's a Wi-Fi one or a 3G one. But it's a.
So are you a smartphone user?
I am a smartphone user, yeah. But I mean, I would have appeared in the smallest category, less than 10 minutes a month or something like that, because I really just pop in and check it in between bus trips or in spare time at a cafe, just check what's going on and then get out again.
Mark, you've worked for both iHug and Vodafone. We've established that our mobile internet use, for whatever reason, is not as big as it might be, and certainly as big as it is in other countries. Why is that, and will it change?
Oh, it's definitely going to change. I'm a heavy user. New Zealand's low at the moment. If you just look at countries such as India, they're connecting 5 million users per month, which is more than clearly that we have in New Zealand. And they're doing that because they don't have the basic fixed infrastructure, the copper in the ground. So the mobile is the means that they use for email, they use for internet access. And dead right, in New Zealand at the moment it's around 6%, but that will grow because you've got 4 million plus mobile users. And I just know from my usage on the iPhone, I use it every day. It now is my main source of accessing the web, accessing my email, because it's so much easier than having to wait till I get home to the PC or docking down at work. So we'll see that change.
And I presume you can afford the cost of doing that. You can afford the cost
when
of
I was
the phone
at
and the cost
Vodafone,
of using it.
that was paid by Vodafone. So what needs to happen is some of the prices coming down, and then you'll see a big uplift.
So how will that happen?
By competition. So 2 degrees coming in. They've got 2G network at the moment, moving to 3G. That'll bring more competition into that space. But also it comes down to actual penetration of smartphone devices. And I think our iPhone is the #1 device in terms of smartphones, well outplaced the old BlackBerry. As you see that go mainstream, things like the iPad, it'll just happen naturally. People will embrace it and they'll use it instead of their fixed line at home for broadband.
Rob, what do you, I mentioned regulation, and there's been a lot of that in the past 5 years. The Labor government did it. Stephen Joyce seems determined to continue. What do you think has been the impact of that government attention to that sector? You know, it seems to me it's been beneficial. It's certainly improved my experience as a consumer.
I mean, to use an overused phrase, faster, cheaper broadband, which I think was a telecom advertising campaign at one point that didn't go down too well, but it actually has happened. You know, we all have much faster access to the internet. We have different ways of doing it. We have more choice about how we do it, more plans, and you know that's all good. And it's hard to see that having come about without the regulation that has happened over the last, especially the last 3 or 4 years.
Are we at the point now where we should, as the JP Morgan analyst suggested this week, start to worry about the fortunes of telecom? You know, he said worst case scenario of regulation in the world. Yeah. And there's a lot of people's pension funds in telecom. Yeah, and I think that was backed again a little bit by an analyst at Ovum who said that the changes to the Universal Services Obligation, the TSO as we call it over here, was that the transition arrangements hadn't been done properly and we were causing unnecessary damage to shareholder value in telecom. And I think you have to say it's been a brutal shock for telecom. You know, it's been. I think they probably thought with the Cunliffe changes that the worst was over, but there's still more hits to come. And we still haven't heard about the $1.5 billion fibre UFB proposal. We don't know where they're going to stand in that. That could hurt them again. How would you see that going, Paul? I mean, there is these big contracts of government money to do regional fibre rollouts. Yep. Should it go to the established providers? Are there going to be community groups wanting to do this?
I have mixed views about that. I mean, there are 2 points I would make around that. Before we get to the connectivity thing, is that what I see this current government are wholly kind of centred on connectivity. The last government had 3 C's, if you remember. There was content, there was capability, and there was connectivity. So there was a whole bunch of initiatives around getting people smarter at using it, you know, and that was very community-led. That was a partnership there. They had that community partnership fund. So you had people like Tuhoy and the Uraweras worked with the government to put broadband through the Uraweras, as well as do some digital storytelling and that kind of stuff. And I liked that kind of more, if you like, holistic approach. And the capability stuff, you know, the library land, who are, you know, I love the library land, but they have the Aotearoa People's Network, where it's not just free internet in some of the rural libraries, but also new kit so people can actually start doing stuff. And there are demonstrable stories of farmers coming off the hill, down from the farm, into a little rural library to do their Facebook stuff, you know, to do the, because it's better. And I think that focus on capability as well as content has been a bit lost with this government.
And same would apply to schools too. I guess everyone's talking about schools being connected to fibre.
There's a bit
Are the teachers going to know
what
are you
going to put down these pipes, and where's the New Zealand content? And I think there's some thinking there that's missing, and I think we need to get back to that. But as to telecom, I have to say, and this is, you know, you got to test run this idea in case you get pilloried in public. But I'm starting to feel a bit sorry for these guys. You know, I mean,
me too, to be honest.
Yeah, people were saying, oh well, Telecom XT went down. I mean, obviously, demonstrably, if it's a life and death thing, that's a very bad thing. But for most of us, well, get over it. You couldn't make I mean, I couldn't make a phone call and a client got grumpy. I was one of those people who had a grumpy client because I couldn't get through. But, you know, we kissed, we made up, it's okay.
Well, on that note of sympathy for the devil, we need to take a break now. We'll return with more on the internet in New Zealand after the break.